Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And this morning we went through 4 different problems from the Chapter 12 lab, which I did in a non-object-oriented programming way. First we did number 1, then we did number 4, and I did those on the first tape. Afterwards I did 5 and 6 on the second tape, but for some reason there's a problem with the tape. Either it didn't engage or I didn't turn it on. I thought I turned it on, so who knows. But I've done another video, just a 5-minute one, which explained what we're doing for the rest of the semester. Now I'm going to redo numbers 5 and 6 for you before your very eyes. And starting tomorrow, we're not going to be using the Google Hangouts. We're going to be using that Zoom product. I used it this afternoon and I think it worked a lot better. So don't worry. Again, you'll just come in and you'll click a URL and it'll get you going. Okay, enough said. So let's first take a look at this. That was this one. So you remember, if I run it, it was supposed to be something like this. You come in here and you say wash windows. Hours to complete 3.5, 22, maybe it was 25 bucks an hour. Plus, so you take this, you multiply it by this, and you add 35, you click update, boom, there's your values. Okay? Hopefully that makes some sense as far as what's there. Clear, I added a clear button, you didn't have to. But let's take a look at the actual code that does all this. Now I've added a boatload of comments since I sent this out to you this morning. So if you do come back and watch this, you'll see a lot more comments on numbers 5 and 6. I did go back and also comment 1 and 4, but I've already done that lecture. So again, my one global constant was this trip fee, which is $35 every time you go through something. We've got 3 global variables: hours to complete, hourly rate, and total fee. All right, and please remember that the total fee will be the hours to complete times the hourly rate, and then we will add 35 to it. All right, so when the form is loaded into memory, we call clear all necessary fields. What that does is it clears this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and it puts the cursor right there on the description. Okay, and just to prove that to you, I jump down toward the bottom. There it is. Clear the 3 text boxes, clear the 4 labels, put the focus back on the first text box. All right. So when you click the update button, here's the code that fires. You'll notice first we've got a Boolean flag that's called keep going that's set to true, and a decimal that's called result. You'll note that decimal does not have any kind of value. It has not been initialized. The reason this variable right here was not initialized is we're using it as an out variable here and here. So do not initialize that. So we come in and we set our flag, our keep going equal to validate description. This means that the function validate description must return a Boolean because we're stuffing it inside of keep going. All right, so let's see. Validate description returns a bool. Return false, return true. So what does it do? It validates that the text box description control is not empty. It says here, if it is empty, which says take what is in there and trim it to remove any trailing or leading spaces. If it's equal to nothing, I could have also put in here string.empty. That would have worked as well. All right, but I didn't, but that's fine. I'll leave it in there for now. If that's the case, if it's empty, we return false after we put in our own message box. That message box will have the text that says cannot have an empty description and a title that says empty description. Since it's bad, we return false. If we get down to here, it wasn't empty. we entered something into the description. I don't care what it was. Could be hello. Could be mommy. It doesn't matter. But we return true. If we return true from this, we now want to call a routine to validate our hours to complete. And we pass in that result as an out parameter. If it wasn't true, we just return. All right. So let's look at that validate hours to complete. We want to validate what's in the text box hours to complete. That whatever in there should not be empty, should be a number, numeric, and it should be greater than 0. So here is our empty check. And if it is empty, we again, custom message box that says cannot have an empty hours to complete with a title empty hours to complete. And we set the result, which we have to set because that's an out parameter. I just set it to -1. We set the focus and we return false. All right. If this happens, here we put something non-numeric in there. So we again give our own message box, cannot have a non-numeric, and we return false. I really should have put in here text box hours to complete dot text equals double quote, double quote. We should have really cleared it out. That would have been just a good thing to do. All right, finally, if we get down to here, we did put a number in there. We were able to parse it here. All right. And since we could, now we want to check to see if it's what? To see if it is positive or not. If it's not positive, we again show our custom error message box. We clear out the field, we set the focus there, we return false. Otherwise, if we get all the way down, we put not only a number in there, but a number that's greater than 0. So we set that number equal to our hours to complete, and we return true. So if we returned true from this, now we can call validate hourly rate. If we return false, we're just going to return. You'll notice that the validate hourly rate is almost identical to the validate hours to complete. It's a different field, but we're making sure that what? Not empty is numeric, is greater than 0. Again, if it's empty, we would just we set result to -1, our custom message box, and we return false. If we get down to here, something was in there, so we have to try to parse it to see if indeed we can convert that into a decimal. All right, this is what we're converting or attempting to convert into a decimal. This is where we're putting the result. You don't have to call it result, but it makes sense to do that. If it didn't work, we again show a custom message box. We again clear out the text and set the focus and say false, which means get the heck out. If we got down to here, we put a number in there, but we now have to check to see if that number that we put in there is greater than 0. If it's not greater than 0, what do? Custom message box. Again, I should put in here text box hourly rate dot text equals double quote, double quote. We say hours to complete in here. Yep. And we set the focus, which we should do, and I didn't do that either. And we get out. Otherwise, it's a valid value. So we copy result, which we did. We figured out result right there. And it's a valid number, so we copy that to hourly rate. We return true. It was all valid. All right, that gets us back into here. And now, if keep going is still set to true, now we calculate the current value. Not a very big routine. We want to calculate the total fee as the hours to complete times the hourly rate plus that $35 trip fee. I don't need parens here, but it never hurts. All right. So now we can just grab our description, and these three lines right here, these three lines that you see, lines 183, 184, and 185, that is copying whatever we put into here to here, whatever we put into here to here, whatever we put into here to here. But this one still has to be figured out. This one right here is whatever value was in here times whatever value was in there, and then the product, we add 35 to it. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we're copying them over, and then we're multiplying one by the other and adding 35, and filling up that one. This is our programmer written method, which handles all message box entries. Handles all message box entries. We pass in a title and text and then just do a message box with those. Just say, we just put an OK button in there and an information icon. Our clear, what does it do? We already went over that. Clear out the 3 text boxes, clear out the 4 labels, set the focus to the first text box, and that's called, when you click the clear button, it's also called when you first come in and load the form into memory. All right. So that is number 4. I'm sorry, number 5. Let's close this and look at number 6. This one maybe was one of the harder ones. All right. This isn't hard. Just putting a string with name, an int with width, an int with length. Every time we go and we put in a brand new room that we want to check for tiling and we click add, this has got to change. It starts at nothing, then it's, when the first room it's a 1, then the second room it's a 2, the third room it's a 3, the fourth room it's a 4, the fifth room it's a 5, then it should be filled. Now they said in the specs 20 rooms, but I just made it 5. The total box is needed. Well, as an example, let's say I put in here bedroom, 10, 10. 10 times 10 is 100. 100 divided by 12 is 8. But there is a remainder left of 4. So that should say 9 for the total boxes needed. And then I can put in 5 of those rooms. And every time I add up the total boxes, and I keep adding to that counter which goes in here. So let's try it. First we'll put in a living room. And let's say that's 12 by 15, 180. And that's 15 boxes. Okay. Clear. Let's try a kitchen. And let's say that's 10 by 15. So that's 150. That's 13 that we need. 13 and 15 is 28. And we've done 2 rooms. Clear again. Bathroom, 10 by 10. Again, 9 boxes. 9, 13 is 22, and 15 is 37. We've now done 3 rooms. Clear again. Office, 8 by 8. That's 64. 64 divided by 12 is 5 with a remainder, so it's 6 boxes. 6 plus 9 is 15, and 13 is 28, and 15 is 43. We've now done 4 rooms. One more time. Let's do a bedroom. And let's say that that's 15 by 15. It needs 19 boxes. 15 times 15 is 256. 256 divided by 12. 15 by 15 is 225. 15 times 15, sorry. Dividing 225 by 12, you get 18 with a remainder, so it's 19. All right, 19 and 6 are 25, and 9 is 34, and 13 is 47, and 15 is 62. We've now done all 5 rooms, so if we attempt to add another one, it's not letting us. I can clear and attempt to add all sorts of new stuff. I don't know, patio, 10 by 12. But when I click add, notice it says it's already filled. You can't do anymore. So if that's done, let's take a quick look at the code. Again, I added a lot more comments than what were in here originally. I made the maximum number of rooms. I made 5. If you wanted to be true to the specifications you were given, you would manually go in and change that from a 5 to a 20. If you do that, you must go and add 15 more empty strings, 15 more zeros here, 15 more zeros here, 15 more zeros here, 15 more zeros here. This name is the current name in here. This width is the current width in here. This length is the current length in here. This B is the current square footage in here. And this total boxes needed is in the boxes needed in here. You'll notice that this names, widths, lengths, square feet, and boxes needed are all arrays. When you click the add button, you'll notice very similar to the last program that we went over, we have something in there called keep going, a Boolean flag, and we also have a result, which is an integer, and we are not setting result because, again, this result will be passed into both validate width and a validate height. So we say if keep going, and it already is set to true, so we always get into this, validate the name. You want to make sure that the name is not empty. If the name is empty, we show a custom message box and we return false. All right, if it's not empty, we get down to here. So we set the message box equal to our global variable called name, and we return true. So when we get back here, we've either returned true or we've returned false from this. If we return true, we next go in and validate the width. All right, so if it's true, the name was not empty, so we must validate the width to make sure that first, the width is not empty. Second, that the width is numeric. And third, that the width is greater than 1. And we're going to have to do that down here too. All right. So what does that mean? I'm going to validate the width with that out result in there. So we come in and we make these 3 checks, similar to what we did before. If the text box width is .text, there's nothing in there, it's empty, so we put in our own message box and we return false. We also set result to -1. If we get down further, it wasn't empty. So we attempt to parse it, which means attempt to grab everything that was put into that text box and convert it into a whole number. If we cannot do that, we again put in our own message box and we return false. And we should probably put the focus there too. And then we return false. All right. If it is non-numeric, I'm sorry, if it is negative, we want to do the same thing. Finally, if we get down to the bottom, we set result equal to our width variable and we return true. All right, I don't know if this will fix this or not. Nope, Z. So we're doing the same kind of checks then next for the length. Why? Because following what we've done here, we already validated the name and the width, so it's time to validate the length. All right. So when we validate the length, same kind of checks, not empty, numeric, and greater than 0. All right. There's not empty. If it's not empty, we try to parse it, so convert what's in that text box into an integer and put the result in result. If it fails, all right, we want a message box, but then we also want a text box, length.text equals clear it out, and put the focus there. If it's less than 0, we want to do the same thing. Put in our own message box. It says the length field must be positive. Take what was in the text box and clear it out and set the focus. All right. Otherwise, it was a valid length, so we return true. So if keep going was true here, we do this. If it's true here, we do this. If it's true here, we do this. And if it's true here, we go and do this stuff at the end, which says basically check to see if the list is full already. If it is full, give a message, and boom, get out. Otherwise, add it. We add it by calling calculate current room and then call fill up output. There's calculate current room. This is really about the only time in here that we're using the array. So take whatever our width was and copy that over to the associated element in the widths array. Take what it was in length and copy it over to the associated element in the lengths array. Multiply length times width and put it in the associated element in the square foot. And this current num rooms just means the current element. All right. Then to find out what we're going to need, we want to take our square feet and divide it by 12. So for example, like 100 divided by 12 gives you 8.3. Then we do a modulo. And when we do the modulo is 4 because 4 goes into 100 24 times with the remaining, 12 goes into 96, or 12 goes into 100 8 times, all right, as an example, with a remainder here of 4. So we have to add one more. So instead of that being 8, we have to add one more, so it's 9. We set our box as needed. We add 1 to the current number of rooms. Then we fill up our output. This got to be a little hinky when I was working on it, so I decided instead to just make it one routine, and that's what I did. All right. This gets called when you click the clear button, and what does that do? It takes all of our text boxes all of our local global variables and just basically clears them out. And we want to make sure we call that clear all individual on the load event too. And that's it. This didn't take long. Oops. Only 20, I was going to say 20 minutes or so. It took longer in class today because we took more time going over it. So the plan tomorrow is to go over and talk about how to do some of these in an object-oriented way. I'll be back with those tomorrow.